What's going on, my Daredevils? It's me, MT, and welcome back to yet another heavy spoilers breakdown of Daredevil Born Again Season 2. Today we're breaking down Episode 7, titled The Hateful Darkness, an episode that featured the grand return of Matt Murdock, as well as the grand sacrifice of a life for the love of a friend. And like always, we're going to recap the episode while diving into certain details that you may have missed and theorizing what's to come for next week's grand finale and beyond. So let's get into it. And as the sun rises over the streets of New York at the start of the episode, we can actually get a look at New Avengers Tower on the horizon, which is actually nice to see. We are then brought to the aftermath of the chaos of City Hall that we saw unfold at the end of last episode. And as we get shots of the streets of the city, we get this shot of one of the City Hall columns. I mean, this detail is probably super insignificant, but I did notice that the word spider was written in white text on one of these black bands circling around a pillar. And while it's likely that this could just be the name of the company that produced this object, this could also very well be a small nod to New York's other favorite spider, the Amazing Spider-Man, a character that Marvel Studios can't specifically mention in any of their projects outside of their deal with Sony Pictures. But we have, of course, gotten slight nods to Spider-Man in Daredevil Born Again before, like how Kingpin briefly did so in the second episode of last season.
We know how to take care of ourselves. We don't need a gun-toting vigilante who wears a skull on his chest, or a man who dresses in a spider outfit.
And right before David Bowie's It Ain't Easy starts playing in the background, Daredevil uses his super ears to scan through various news sources covering last night's mayhem. The first female reporter that we hear says the words, "last night's attack on City Hall by criminals," a framing that intentionally makes the protesters the aggressors and the anti-vigilante task force the innocent victims just trying to defend themselves. On the other hand, right after this, we hear a male news reporter refer to the people outside of City Hall as protesters, a subtle way to continue showing how biased and divided the media is in regards to their own position on the Fisk administration, presenting the side that they believe in as the most righteous in their actions, much like what happens in real life. And during this news report scan, we also learn that the events of the night before left 3 people injured and 2 dead, with the 2 dead likely referring to Agent Alan Saunders, whose head we saw get popped off by Psycho Task Force Agent Powell, as well as Angela Del Toro's friend Javi Espinosa, whose head that Karen Page found bleeding after Javi was brutally bonked on the head. And the last reporter voice that we hear in the background then claims that, quote, Mayor Fisk vows to restore order to the city. And Fisk proves that dedication to order during his spiteful visit to see the newly incarcerated Karen Page. Kingpin starts off by telling Karen that she has taken people from him, with Kingpin, of course, referring to his old right-hand man Wesley, who had his shirt absolutely ruined when he was Swiss cheesed by Karen Gage in episode 11 of the first season of Netflix Daredevil. But luckily for Wesley's corpse, he could just buy an even better shirt over at the Heavy Spoilers merch store. Maybe even one of our Daredevil Born Again inspired shirts, like our new Fearless t-shirt inspired by the Man Without Fear himself, or maybe even our newer Deadly Aim t-shirt inspired by Bullseye. We've got all that and so much more over at the Heavy Spoilers merch store, so stop by heavyspoilers.shop today to get you some. Karen then responds by mocking how scared the Kingpin looks in between her prison bars, as well as in the eyes of the public after the previous night's violence. This comment then rage baits Kingpin enough into grabbing Karen by the throat and claiming that what Karen mistakes as fear is actually a renewed resolve for order, which is an excuse that many fascist leaders use in order to justify the use of excessive force and unjust incarcerations. This idea of order also very much matches Kingpin's white color scheme, which seeks to paint him as a divine angel championing righteousness. This, of course, is a stark contrast to Daredevil's own red color scheme, which ironically paints him as a symbol of fear and chaos as the Crimson Devil of Hell's Kitchen, striking terror in the hearts of anyone who dare seek to escape the judgment of Lady Justice. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, Wilson is actually chaos wearing the clothing of order, while Daredevil is a sheep in wolf's clothing, order wearing the clothing of chaos and fear. The two of them complement each other like a yin-yang in that way. But beyond Karen getting her throat yoinked by Kingpin, another element that truly surprised me during this confrontation is just how defiant Karen is in the face of the most terrifying man in New York City. Well, besides Sentry anyway. Like, bro literally had Karen by the throat like she was Bart Simpson in the 90s, and that crazy bitch was just smiling, even in the face of possible death. That moment right there is such a fantastic example of how Karen Page, much like many of the other characters in this series, has been born again during this new era. Like, just thinking back to the early days of Netflix Daredevil and seeing just how terrified Karen used to be of Fisk and his power, it's so crazy to see just how much much her character has evolved from being a frightened victim to a defender of truth and justice to now being a full-blown seeker of revenge. Like, hard times really do have the capacity to change and evolve us into completely new beings. And that is very much the crux of the Marvel Universe, to be completely honest. The grand design, one might say, much like Vanessa Fisk did when she was sipping on that pineapple drink on her deathbed. I mean, Marvel Studios did effectively make a whole Avengers movie about this concept with Avengers Age of Ultron. In that film, Ultron chastises the Avengers for not allowing humanity to experience hard times. You know, like the time the Avengers stopped S.H.I.E.L.D. from dropping nukes on New York in Avengers 1, or that time that Captain America stopped Hydra from dropping nukes across the world in Captain America the First Avenger, or how Captain Marvel stopped the Kree from dropping alien nukes on the planet in Captain Marvel 1. And that's exactly why Ultron was drawn towards mutants like Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, as their incredibly rough past as survivors of war would begin to trigger their mutant powers. And this very much ties to what I was saying before about order and chaos. Through the chaos of hard times comes growth, which gives one the power to restore what they believe as order by undergoing a radical change. And this never-ending barrage of chaotic change is exactly what makes life worth living. And without it, a universe of constant order would be never changing and boring as hell. That being said, order and chaos are not opposites, but two halves that work together to promote evolution, much like what Vision tells Ultron at the end of Avengers 2.
Humans are odd. They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be. But there is grace in their failings. I think you missed that.
They're doomed.
Yes. But a thing isn't beautiful because it lasts.
And these concepts of order and chaos are so important to Marvel lore that they've established two big-headed cosmic entities to embody these concepts and push the cosmos along, with their names being appropriately Master Order and Lord Chaos, deities that have been in charge of manufacturing the balance and evolution of the entire cosmos. Master Order is pictured as a big, bald, white face, much like Kingpin's, while Lord Chaos is depicted as a darkened, monstrous-looking face, much like how Daredevil is depicted as a demon, which is kind of funny. But in a similar but much smaller scale, Karen herself is evolving to meet the challenges of her time, undergoing a violent rebirth, much like how New York has evolved and gotten tougher from Kingpin's brutal rule. But anyways, after the intro, the time is 8:20 a.m. when a sleeping Mr. Charles is jolted awake by a pissed off Jessica Jones. Apparently, Mr. Chuck fell asleep reading an issue of Pan National Airlines magazine, with the words "Travel to Asia" being printed on the cover, pointing to Mr. Charles potentially heading to Asia for his next CIA mission. This Pan National magazine is actually a slight nod towards the Amazing Spider-Man 2 film featuring Andrew Garfield and Jamie Foxx. In that film, Electro decides to knock the power out of New York City, leading to the near collision of Pan National Flight 273 with another plane.
New York approach. This is Pan National 273 on approach. How do you hear? Approach, do you copy?
Radio's working, it's not us.
And before Jessica could get a chance to ram a size 10 boot up his frightened rectum, Mr. Charles insists that the heavily armed government agents that were sent to her house were only supposed to tell Jessica to back off, which is a bold-faced lie in my opinion, because like I said before, those goons were packing. Jessica then begins to threaten Mr. Charles by grabbing him, but Mr. Charles tells her that a little birdie told him that her powers have been on the fritz, with that little birdie of course alluding towards Mike Coulter's Luke Cage. Mr. Charles then tells Jessica that Luke Cage is currently out of the country on a special mission for him. And while he doesn't give her an exact location of where Luke is or what kind of work he's doing for the American government, we do know that Luke Cage's comic book counterpart is no stranger to working for sketchy government entities in the past. Back in the year 1984, we learned that Luke was once a temporary agent for a secret government group known as Special Military Intelligence Law Enforcement Division, or SMILE for short. In issue 112 of Power Man and Iron Fist, we see how SMILE blackmails both Luke Cage and Iron Fist into going on a top secret mission for them. And in 2004's Secret War run, no relation to Secret Wars, we see Nick Fury recruiting Luke Cage along with a few other superheroes to go on a secret mission to Latveria to eliminate Latveria's current leader, a woman by the name of Lucia von Bardis. However, because that mission would end up with a tremendous loss of innocent Latverian lives, Nick Fury would then choose to wipe the memories of all the members of his secret superhero strike force so that they could live in ignorance of what they helped cause. But Lucia von Yvonne Bardas would end up surviving the attack on her life, retaliating by exploding Luke Cage and putting him in a coma. But anyways, if Luke Cage is on a mission overseas, then maybe Mr. Charles' magazine is Marvel's way of teasing that Luke Cage is on a mission somewhere in the continent of Asia. However, as Asia is a massive freaking continent, it's tough to really pin down what country he would be in if this is even the case. But at any rate, I can safely say that whatever Luke Cage is seeking to gain out of his involvement with Mr. Charles and Contessa Val's CIA, it's for sure to end badly, especially after seeing just how nonchalant Val was when she was attempting to incinerate the members of the Thunderbolts after she was done using their skills for her own gain. But anyways, Mr. Charles then tells Jess that Kingpin very likely plans to assassinate Governor McCaffrey in order to stop her from pulling the plug on Fisk's entire administration. News that Jess brings to Daredevil immediately. And when the two meet up again, Jess comments how odd it is that Matt decided to meet on yet another rooftop. A hilarious nod towards how the Daredevil series has been historically obsessed with rooftop settings for conversation and action. The two of them are then met by Cherry, who seems to be recovering well after his heart attack wrote him out of most of the season. He tells Matt that Karen is formally booked and is being held at the 15th precinct, and that she was recently visited by the mayor himself while he's in the process of fast-tracking Karen's own rigged vigilante trial. And to avoid Daredevil being further painted as a law-breaking criminal, Cherry advises against Matt breaking Karen out, and instead reaches out to Matt's old 15th precinct pal, Brett Mahoney, who we see played once again by actor Royce Johnson in this episode. We last saw Detective Sergeant Mahoney chasing down Frank Castle in season 2 of The Punisher before the grand wave of Marvel Netflix cancellations. Brett Mahoney uses his influence to briefly let Karen out of her cell to go outside to talk to Matt, who fortunately cannot see the marks that Karen now has on her skin after Kingpin had her by the neck. They apologize to each other for their intense argument the previous episode before discussing how the mayor intends to publicly shame and humiliate Karen in front of the world on live television. And seeing how Karen helped humiliate Kingpin the same way in the past, such an action serves as a petty way of Kingpin getting what he believes to be just revenge. And speaking of Kingpin, we see Heather Glenn pop by his office to pay her former client a visit. She gives Kingpin some encouraging words before the mayor pulls out one of Vanessa's earrings from his desk, the matching earring that Heather impulsively stole during Vanessa's funeral. The mayor rejects Heather's apology and instead low-key applauds her impulsive nature, something that he can personally relate to. I mean, after all, he did impulsively attack Karen earlier in the episode. Heather would of course take the mayor's words to heart when she does a bit of Karen hurting of her own later on in the episode, giving into her impulsivity completely during Karen's post-trial psych eval. During that evaluation, Karen decides to mock Heather's previous insecurities about her ex-boyfriend Matt Murdock, triggering Heather to go full on professional impulsivity mode, bringing up how Karen killed her younger brother Kevin Page in the past. But while Heather tries to make it look like Karen intentionally did that to her brother, those of us who have seen episode 10 of Netflix Daredevil season 3 know that Kevin Page died during an accidental car crash.
Watch out!
Butterbean okay?
Heather pretends to console Karen by implying that Karen hurt Kevin in retaliation for him violating her in the past, before bringing up how Karen must have felt powerful after getting revenge on James Wesley. And this line of questioning seems to be a fairly obvious bit of projection on Heather's part, as she is actually the one who is slowly learning how powerful it feels to enact violence against people who hurt her, much like Buck Cashman encouraged her to do in Vanessa's room the day that she stole Vanessa's earrings. Heather then brings up how Karen has allowed herself to be manipulated by men throughout her entire life, with the mention of Frank Castle's name causing Karen to tell Heather to shut the hell up, a reaction that Heather finds curious, implying that Karen may have some unaddressed feelings towards the Punisher. Karen fires back by bringing up Vanessa Fisk and how pathetic Heather was for attaching herself to the Fisk family just because she got her heart broken by Matt. This then leads us to getting yet another surprise appearance of the ghost of Muse, who we see in the window of the meeting room in the background silently encouraging Heather to go apeshit. And apeshit Heather goes, bitch slapping Karen in the face like she owed her money for pitying her as a victim. Slap, slap.
Slap, slap, slap. Clap, clap, clap.
But backtracking a bit, during the day of Karen's actual trial, Karen's lawyer, Kirsten McDuffie, dramatically calls in her partner Matt Murdock to help her, with Spectrum News yet again broadcasting the vigilante trial live to Kingpin's office. And after Matt asks Officer Powell a few questions, Kirsten questions Cole North, who brings up the dope Daredevil Punisher team-up fight in Matt's old apartment that we saw at the end of last season, before said apartment exploded, leaving Cole's face severely scarred. Kirsten asks North if Powell or Kingpin ordered him to kill the previous White Tiger, Hector Ayala, which we saw North do at the end of episode 3 of Born Again Season 1. Kirsten's words during this trial appear to affect Governor McCaffrey, who then immediately informs Attorney General Steve Rudd that she's going ahead with her plans to kick Fisk out of City Hall. However, later that night, in retaliation, one of Kingpin's assassins would attempt to silence the governor forever by choking her out, only for her to be saved by an atonement-seeking Bullseye at the request of Daredevil. And with Bullseye having saved the governor from getting choked out by this assassin, I feel like the chances of Benjamin Poindexter getting approached by Mr. Charles shot up significantly, because much like we discussed before, Mr. Charles seems to be collecting enhanced people and deploying them on missions around the world. So with Bullseye now a free man looking for a sense of purpose, he is the perfect target to be used by Mr. Charles, much like Black Widow's sister Yelena was for Val when she was looking for purpose in her own life. But much like I brought up in a previous video, I can also see Val throwing Bullseye on the New Avengers temporarily in order to act as her own personal spy, much like how Amanda Waller ordered Peacemaker to keep an eye on the Suicide Squad in James Gunn's Suicide Squad film over on the DC side of things. But anyways, after the big trial, the AVTF wastes no time in attempting to eliminate Murdock and McDuffie by sending their goons to gun him down. But luckily, Angie, Kim, and Cherry would safely escort Kirsten and Karen away before Matt himself gets hit by one of these flying bullets. But instead of getting his wound patched up immediately, Matt would limp his ass over to Clinton Church, praying to St. Jude instead, the patron saint of desperate cases and impossible situations. And St. Jude appears to instantly answer his prayers by bringing Jessica Jones in to help him in his hour of need, teasing yet another team up for the season finale that I am super excited for. And we of course cannot end this breakdown without talking about poor Daniel Blake, because when we catch back up with Daniel and BB, we see him confronting BB about her betrayal while wearing a Stuyvesant speech and debate shirt, a school that very likely helped forge Daniel Blake's silver tongue that got him his job in the first place. The two of them exchange words before Daniel claims that the two of them need to find a safe house, a suggestion that causes BB to call Daniel Jason Bourne, a reference to the iconic franchise featuring Matt Damon.
Jason Bourne as Jesus Christ.
Daniel then lies to BB by saying that he knows a guy that can give them both a safe place to stay, while secretly planning to hand BB over to Buck. Daniel then drives BB to where he's supposed to drop her off and tells her about the dirty deed of disposing a dead dude with a deadly dapper British man. But when BB realizes what Daniel's doing, BB manages to talk Daniel out of it, leading Daniel to let her go, knowing full well that he just gave up his own life for hers. And despite everything Daniel has done in the past, I respect him hardcore for being a man and meeting up with Buck anyway. And while I'm sure Buck respected him in some degree as well, Buck would have no other choice but to attempt to beat the information out of him before gunning his favorite work buddy down. And man, was I devastated when Daniel died, man. I thought that Buck would show some sort of mercy and tell Daniel to leave the city and just disappear, but unfortunately, British Wesley is all business all of the time and would do what needs to be done for the Kingpin of crime. And once BB learns that the Fisk regime has killed yet another person close to her, I feel like Homegirl is gonna crash the hell out and do something super dramatic to expose Fisk and his corrupt actions once and for all. Because I don't think she's gonna take another death sitting down. Like, I definitely feel like she's gonna fully unmask herself as the true face of City Without Fear and provide concrete proof that will change how the entire city perceives Kingpin forever. But like always, only time will tell there. But anyways, that is it for this breakdown of episode 7 of Daredevil Born Again Season 2. What do you guys think is going to happen in the finale? Give us your predictions in the comment section down below. But like always, you guys can follow me at Mastertainment on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, wherever I am on the internet. But most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube by hitting that subscribe button and maybe even hitting that like button if you guys enjoy the video. But like always, I have been MT, you guys have been amazing, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.